You have choice. You have always had choice. What change can we be today? What action can we take to create a future of greater possibilities? Welcome to the Choice, Change and Action podcast with your host, Simone Milasas. Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Choice, Change and Action podcast. And yes, you're with me again in hotel quarantine because I know I've been pumping out these podcasts here, which the people I work with, who I like to call my conglomeration of idiots, are incredibly grateful and excited that I am got so many podcasts, that I've been recording. So I'm here. It's day 11. Apparently, I realized last night that I can't count. And I've done one day twice or missed a day or something. I thought yesterday was day 11, but today's day 11. So it's serious Groundhog Day for me. And you know what? How does it get any better than this? But today I have a lovely lady that I've known for quite some time, actually. We haven't spent a great deal of time together, but I think there's been like this mutual admiration is what I want to say from watching each other from afar, and I mean afar because we're literally on opposite sides of the world. So welcome, Christel Crawford.
Thank you so much. I adore you. I'm so glad to be here.
And I did see you recently, actually, in Mexico, which was really really nice to see you and hug you and
Yeah.
be in
Yeah.
your space.
Yeah.
So where are you now?
So I am living in Panama with
Mhm.
my partner, and that's new. We were living in Canada just before this, and I grew up in the States. So yeah, I'm having a totally different adventure here in Central America, which is an adventure.
We'll call it an adventure, ladies and gentlemen. So before we started recording today, Christel and I were just having a little bit of a chat because I want to walk down any avenue and any road and with that, like, relationships done different angle, but where are we functioning from and what are we choosing? And if you haven't, we'll have it in the show notes. But if you haven't checked out Christel's, social media, etc., I was just saying to her, I love the way she writes. She's very good at putting words together and explaining something, and there's a huge amount of vulnerability in which she comes across at. And so, I guess it's a bit voyeuristic, but that's what we do on social media. We watch each other.
Yeah, that's what it's for.
And yeah, exactly. Yeah. And and I like that you don't make everything out to be like, yay, there's double rainbows and everything's okay. And that's what we were just mentioning. Like, a lot of people have spoken to Brendan Watt and myself about, relationship, and we've got I think by now we would have had this call. Breaking up is easy-ish because people go, oh, you did it so well, and we're like, well, we used the tools. Like, sometimes it was really friggin' tough, but
Yeah.
how are you going to handle it? Are you going to do trauma and drama, or are you going to use the tools and be able to change your reality? So I do want to actually talk about your relationship and the different aspects that it's gone down. And you were mentioning before we started that you met this guy and then you decided to move in together, which was before, ladies and gentlemen, March 2020, correct?
Yes. So we
So
met this guy on Facebook dating, which doesn't exist everywhere. So I didn't know it existed. We popped up on Facebook dating. We literally met and went and had a drink. And I had 2 days left in the country. So we decided to spend those evenings together and then stayed in touch while I traveled to Europe. And I knew I wasn't staying where I was living currently, and he and I were really vibing. So I just asked some questions. What will my life be like in 5 years if I choose London, Ontario, which is, if you don't know London, a very middle of the road Canadian city. And it was yes. And so we moved in together after 4 weeks of knowing each other and 2 nights together.
you just mentioned a tool, and I'd like to just break this down and talk about this for a second because this is something, being in hotel quarantine, it's really been quite confronting with a lot of things. And the other day I looked at this and we used this tool. It's an access consciousness tool that Christel mentioned. Where will my life be in 5 years' time if I choose this? And I realized the other day, I haven't allowed myself to really play with this at the moment of what I'd like my life to be like in 5 years' time, in 10 years, 20 years. Like, really take that space to go, well, what is it that I'm asking for? Like, I'm about to go home to my home in Peregian Beach, and I was like, well, I actually don't want to be saying, hey, in 10 years' time, that's where I'm living. Could it be my summer house? Sure. but not my, full-time primary place of residence. And I realized I haven't been like looking at what it is that I'd like to create and ask for, because when we ask for it, we can actualize it. So when you said, ask yourself, this is what I find hilarious, is when you ask yourself, where will my life be in 5 years' time? Or what would my life be like in 5 years' time, actually? Correction. What would my life be like in 5 years' time if I moved in? Now, the whole idea of asking this question is you're not looking for a result or a conclusion. You're looking for an energy. Can you describe what actually showed up for you when you asked that question?
Yeah, well, this question is one you can use to just simply perceive energy, but I tend to like head trip myself out of perceiving. So I turn this question into a yes, no question, and I ask truth ahead of it. So I go, truth, what will my life be like in 5 years? Yes or no? And I just go with whatever pops into, like, awareness is so fast. And if you turn it into a yes, no, it pops. So that's how I use it. And I use it as I have been using it almost with everything lately. I've really made a commitment to that question, but I used it because it made no sense. Like, London, Ontario is middle of nowhere, like not like nothing. You would not move there. That's not a city you go to move to.
She means that the nicest possible way. Any of the listeners from
I love
London,
you, Ontario. I love you, Canadians, but everybody gets what I'm saying. And so it was not logical, but there was energy there, and I wanted to see, okay, I would have to move everything, my life. I'm willing to make all of that happen if it's going to mean I have a greater future. And for me, I learned a while ago that I didn't really care how the choices turned out. As long as I got a yes, my life is going to be greater in 5 years if I chose it. And
love
that's been a ride, because I've made some choices where I got my life would be greater in 5 years, and they were like a shit show. And I was like, but what got catalyzed out of that was this immense shift in what I was willing to have as my life, or totally changing the fundamental place I was functioning from with relationship or whatever. Something would always come that was greater if it was just even for me personally. So yeah, so I committed to that a while back, and that was why I asked it, because I was like, well, this is not logical, but will it be greater?
So you, like, at that time in your life when you asked that question, you had, I mean, I guess not really a reference point, but you had some sort of flow that you would be home and then you'd travel. You'd be home and then you'd travel, correct?
Yes. I was traveling a lot. In fact, right before I met him, I was in Europe for a month, and I was heading to Australia after that for another month. And so we were going to spend minimal time together, which we talked about it. We were like, I think this will really work. I travel a lot. You have your space. I have my space. And then
March 2020, ladies and gentlemen.
And we no longer had that space.
But you had moved in with him, correct?
We had moved in, yeah. And we'd moved from his small 1-bedroom into a house. So we had a little more space to navigate. But yeah, we were living together at that point, brand new, pretty much been together 3 or 4 months at that point. And we're all of a sudden thrown together 24/7. He wasn't working, I was working at home, and had this whole other thing to navigate. It went from, having the space to sort of like deal with our own stuff to like, now what are you going to do?
Yeah. Morning. Coffee? Yeah. Oh, you're here again. That's nice. Yeah.
So good.
Now, he also, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is totally from my voyeuristic place of watching you. He has a daughter as well, right?
He has a daughter, a 7-year-old daughter. Yes. And she is.
That's a big gig too.
Huge gig. And she was not a fan of me. She was not a fan of me. She was not a fan of me in his life. She was not a fan. And he is really committed to her. And so there was this whole other like relationship dynamic to navigate that I didn't think I did that well with, honestly. Like, I had to really, 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 really use the tools to not just fly off into the patterns of relationship that I learned from my mom, that we learned in my family. So that was kind of my first really major challenge, I guess, with choosing in every moment what I was going to be with things. And sometimes I would just react because there was just all these new energies and dynamics that I hadn't had to navigate. You don't have to navigate when you're a single person just dating, right?
Yeah, well, it's and this, I really would like you guys, if you're listening to this too, to have a look at, because this is so much about relationships done different. And the piece that you just said there too, you don't have to navigate those energies. And it's interesting because I chose to be single for a long time,
Yeah.
and dating and doing all of that, but not. I was like, I have such a busy life. I love my life. I love working
I
with
was doing the
Access and
same
doing
thing.
all of this.
Yeah.
I don't need a relationship, is the road I was heading down. Yeah. But here's what I got to say, I fooled myself into thinking that I was choosing that based on it was all about me, and it was this like, like freedom of choice or something, not realizing what I was actually doing was cutting off a whole lot of energies that
Yeah.
I was like, no, no,
Yep.
can't deal with that one. I'll put
Yep.
you over there because
Yep.
look at me. I'm free. You know, I have dates, I have lovers, I have this, but then I say goodbye because I've got this massive life that I'm creating.
Exactly. Yeah, justifying, which you don't even know you're doing it, but justifying
No.
not receiving and not needing to navigate being stronger there, because
Yeah.
it's simpler when you're single. And that's, I looked at that recently, and I'm sort of skipping ahead in timelines. Like, we looked at that. I'm like, it is simpler when I'm single, but my life is greater with you in it. And that's an interesting thing to just constantly be present with. Like,
I think that's a really key piece. And I'd just like to reiterate that again for all of you out there as well. It's like, and I agree. It's like life is simpler when you're single, and not
yeah,
making relationship right or wrong, like that is something that you should do or something that you shouldn't do. But what if you gave yourself infinite choice so that
yeah,
you could receive all energies? And as Christel said, which is a really key piece, it's a greater contribution. And that's what I looked at. Like, there's quick story, when I actually started a relationship with Brendan Watt, who had a 5-year-old, right? And I was the same. I was like, I'm not doing kids, don't want to do kids. I've got this busy life that I'm creating, blah blah blah. But he had a 5-year-old, and I lived in a 2-bedroom apartment, terrace house, and I was using one bedroom as an office, right? So then
yeah.
all of a sudden, Brendan's hanging out a lot, and bringing his kid who's sleeping on this fold-out couch in my office, and then I was like, this feels like we're living together in this 2-bedroom place. And I remember we came back from New Zealand from this trip we did, and Brendan looked at me and he said, I need somewhere to put my clothes. And I went, are you moving in? He went, I think so. And that's how he moved in. And we were like, okay. But then all of a sudden, it was like a few weeks later, I went to the beach because I was feeling really like weirded out by everything
Yep.
that was occurring. And I went to the beach for a walk, came home, and he wasn't home. So I went to the bedroom, and I was sitting on the bed and I was just crying. And then he came in, he was like, what's up? And I looked at him and I went, I don't know if I can do this. And he was like, what do you mean? And I was like, I didn't ask for a 5-year-old. Like, I love Nash. He's a really cool kid, but I all of a sudden I've got this, I was navigating this 2-bedroom terrace house across the road from the beach, creating my life, and all of a sudden my office has got a 5-year-old in it. And I'll never forget the day I said to him, you need to clean up your stuff. And he looked at me and he went, well, where do I put it? And I went, oh, crap, he doesn't have anywhere to put his stuff.
No
I was like,
space.
okay, I need to like create something. And Brendan looked at me and he said, well, I sort of come with a 5-year-old. And I went, I know. And he said, look, we don't have to break up, but we can move out, like, and create something different. And I was like, okay, let me just sit with this for a moment. And then
Yes.
Brendan went up north, and he was a tradesman at the time, and he went working up there. And we had this bar swap one day, and there's a whole bunch of people at this bar swap, and Nash came with his grandmother, with Brendan's mum. So, and he runs in the room and he's like, Simone, and hugs me and stuff. And then he's running around this like venue and stuff, falls over, grazes his knee, doesn't go to grandma, runs over to me, jumps on the bed, and just was like, Simone, and just hugged into me.
Oh my
And I was
gosh.
like,
It's over.
damn. Yeah, I was like, this energy, why would I not have this energy in my life? And I
Yeah.
rang Brendan and I was like, all right, your son just created, the next
Oh,
move, but
yeah, yeah,
allowing that energy to come in and also allowing that next move to be. So then, of course, we went, okay, we're busting at the seams here. We're going to kill each other. So let's move to a much bigger house. So we did, and then made that next move. But it is a really interesting thing to navigate that too, with a child, like a stepchild.
Yeah. And I had to do a lot of like giving myself internal permission to not do it, like
Yeah.
often. Because there were a lot of moments where even in, making that foray into step mamahood, which who the heck even knows what that means, right? Like that's something that I'm creating as we go. And then I discover I'm being my mom. And then I'm like, who's that? And, what do I want to choose here? I'm navigating my own parenting world that I didn't even really know that I was choosing exactly until I did it. And then, I'm also navigating the way he's parenting, which he's been doing for the last 6 or 7 years, and his dynamic and how that works with her, but that's not that way with me. So there was like so many different energies and dynamics to choose what I was going to be with. And many times I chose reaction, and then I would have to like step back and go, okay, cool. Like, what do I want to choose now? So man, it was a huge facilitation of me as a being. And so I had to give myself a lot of permission to go, yeah, today I'm not doing this. But it was more just between me and me going, quitting, I'm firing myself, and then choosing again to engage and, begin creating again. So, when you guys wrote your book, Relationship, Do You Think You Want? Are you sure you want one? I'm like, I finally get it. Because it's a lot.
Yeah. I mean, and we wrote that book. So if you don't know, Brendan and myself wrote a book called Relationship, Are You Sure You Want One? Mainly because a lot of people were asking us, how are you creating a relationship? Because it's this constant navigation. And I've got to say, there's a huge amount of honoring that we both had of each other and our choices. Yeah. And so that created way more ease. But then we ended up putting it into a book. But also, we broke the relationship up just as we launched the book, which gave our PR agent like a mini heart attack. And we had all this TV booked in the US, and we're like, don't worry about it. We've got this, And we did. We had it because it was like just because like it's a question. Relationship, are you sure you want one? Mm-hmm. And to me, you've got to be in question every day. It's not something, even if you get married, even if you have kids, it shouldn't be something that you're like, this is now my life. Like, I love that you indulged with you of, I'm done, not from this place of like truly quitting, but this energy of just going, okay, let's rediscover me again. And then what is it that I'd like to choose?
Yeah. And it was pretty constant. I mean, I think that's important to say, because it's like, I came in, I don't know, I've come into creating things with a lot of different fantasies that I didn't even know I picked up. Like, if you really care about somebody and you're vibing with somebody, then it's going to be easy, that conclusion, so it was like,
let's just take a moment, have a little giggle there. No.
I mean, what is that? I don't even know. And so, I would remind myself, so I was in a constant use and reminding of myself of like, Gary says that relationship is 24 hours, it's the hardest job you'll ever do. And just reminding myself that, I'm not crazy. This is a lot, it's like he says he discourages us facilitators from co-facilitating with somebody because it brings up all your stuff. And, and I was navigating too, like in the beginning, first year or in a year, the huge part of probably half of our relationship, he wasn't into access. He was in allowance of it, but he wasn't it wasn't his thing. So I was really using the tools all on my own and just navigating what I wanted to choose and what I wanted to be with this and what I wanted to create here. And I realizing that I had a lot of power in the tone I would set, I had a lot of power, and what was I going to do with it? And so
what do you mean by that?
Well, I think it was Gary that said, as a person who's choosing consciousness, you have the responsibility. Like, I don't think he said it quite like that, but it was like, if you're the person choosing more consciousness, you have more ability with responding. And so what will I be with that? Like, I will either go, I don't want to have to do that, and I'll pitch a fit about it, which I did in private sometimes. And then, I'd get over it and go, okay, well, so I was noticing that they would follow my lead. If I was going to go into reaction and I was going to go into like withdrawing or separating, all these things I learned how to do really well, then, they were following what I was choosing.
Yeah.
So I was like, that's interesting. Like, I don't think I got until that moment that it's follow the leader. It's really follow the leader here. And so it's like,
Yeah.
am I going to acknowledge that? And what do I want to be with that? Like, and that continues to be this really incredible gift, because it isn't that I'm making all the choices. It is that I'm leading with the choices I have available. And so that's been a growing awareness over these last 2 years of going. But what's interesting about acknowledging that is that also my receiving is increasing, because I'm realizing like the gift that he's willing to be for and with me, that I can then receive, because I'm willing to be the gift that I am and what I can choose. And there's this really incredible gifting and receiving that's getting developed out of that one awareness.
So I want to ask you a question here, if you can break this down as well, because when you said follow the leader, I get what you're talking about. It's like when if you're choosing, to change something or ask a question, etc. But I can see a lot of people would misidentify that and put that as like, oh, now I get to control. So
Yeah.
can you sort of talk a little bit about the difference about like truly leading rather versus than control? Especially, I'm allowed to say it, but especially with women, it's
Totally.
like I can see they just want to control their man, control the
Yep.
family rather than
Totally.
lead.
And
Like, what's the
I am the
difference?
queen of I'm the queen of control. Like I can do it in a heartbeat.
I
I
can
do
put
do
two
it.
hands up too.
Like I'm a controller of magnitude. And that's the thing that I've been really like, out of control is the ask that I made. There's this cool clearing in access consciousness that goes, what energy, space, and consciousness can me and my body be to be out of control, out of definition, out of limitation, out of form, structure, and significance, out of concentricities, and out of linearity for all eternity. Like, it's a mouthful. But
And
the
everything in
ask,
that is time for Godzillion, right and wrong, good and bad, pock and parona, in shorts, boys and beyonds. It is a brilliant process, and it is one of my go-to processes. Yeah.
it is. And Gary actually, I think, says do that 30 times a day for 30 days out loud, or no, 6 months, something like 30 times a day out loud for 6 months. Anyway, run it as much as you can. But that's been my ask and my choice. And so, of course, when you start to ask for that, you notice everywhere you're doing control, which is like, for me, was everywhere. And so as I as that just started to kind of melt out of my world, I started to get more awareness of where I was doing control. At first, I resisted this whole thing. I resisted the idea that I wanted other people to choose no matter what I was choosing. I actually wanted to control the whole thing that was occurring, which was that when I choose, people sort of follow what I'm choosing. I wanted to resist that by controlling, no, but you've got your own choices, and no matter what I'm choosing, you can choose. Anyway, and one day I sat down and I just really looked at what is. And I looked at, like, when I choose to be more space, and when I choose allowance, and when I choose gratitude and honoring, just those energies, when I am that, we have ease. And when I am not choosing that, we don't have ease. And I was like, I can resist that and want it to be different. Or I can really look at it and go, okay, would I be willing to be the source of this? Like, this seems to be what's occurring. Would I be willing? And I was like, okay, what would that take? And that's really just where I started to play, was being willing to being with what is. Because I have fought a lot in my life. I fought a lot of things, like, it shouldn't be this way, and I don't want it to be this way, and that person should be different, and I should be different. But I was really playing with, like, well, what is what is what it is, that's it. And as I looked at it and saw what was occurring, I was like, okay, I'm not the source of his choices or her choices, but I'm the source of what I want to be the source of, and they seem to follow that. So I'm like, okay, well, what do I want to be the source of here? And I asked myself that a lot. And so as I started to get that I could be the source of anything I choose, I can be the source of reaction, I can be the source of criticism and judgment and control very easily. I started to choose kind of in every moment of, like, well, what do I want to be the source of here? Like, in this particular moment. And so that, showed up different in a lot of different situations, but it's created a different possibility for us, for sure.
I love the way you say that, because I can see that a lot of people, like when you first started talking, would say like this, follow the leader, and have more of this like doing, like, this is where we're
Yeah.
going, like, we're moving house, or we're doing that, or we're this. But I love the way you refer to the source that you can be. And on a recent podcast I did with Shannon O'Hara, we were talking about, you can't control from gratitude or joy or ease. It's like,
No.
because gratitude, ease, and joy don't have this definition. They don't have this this reference point and this confinement. So if you wake up, I love it, and then you're being the source of ease. You're being like, recently when I came into Australia, and it's the weirdest thing in the world, because there's one flight that comes in and we had 24 people on our flight, and there was more military and police at the airport. And I don't know about you, but it's like, there's a difference between seeing a man in a uniform that looks sexy and you're like, damn, to seeing lots of men in uniform and it's very confronting.
Mm-hmm.
And I actually walked out, and I remembered I was speaking to Shannon, and she had done this hotel quarantine, etc. before, and she said, I made the demand on myself that I would, get off the plane, and I would be using the mantra of access consciousness. All of life comes to me with ease, joy, and glory.
Mm.
And I would choose that ease and that joy and that glory. And so I remembered her saying that, and I was like, oh, that's what I'm choosing. And I noticed that every interaction and every engagement I had with the military and with police, and you have a lot, it
Yeah.
was this ease in my world. Like, it was like, I'm me, here I am, and this
Yeah.
is what I'm choosing. Do I agree with hotel quarantine? Absolutely not. But am I going to stand there and fight with you about it in this 10 seconds? No, it's not going to get me anywhere. So you're a being, I'm a being. Hi.
Yeah.
And had this energy. And I noticed that everything flowed so well. And it was like, and it's also a contribution to their world. Like, you can tell that a lot of these guys, they don't want to do this job either. Like, they joined the military not to be keeping people, in hotel quarantine. I don't think that was their
This is their
insight.
dream job when they were
Yeah,
4 years old.
exactly.
I
Into
just
what
want
it
to
was gonna
control
be.
everybody and leave. Yeah.
Exactly. Yeah. And the same as the police. So
Yeah.
I love that you're saying that. It's like, so even today, guys, when you're listening to this or listening to this whenever, it's like, what source of energy can you choose to be today that creates a greater possibility for you, others, and the planet?
Yeah.
And everything that is times a godzillion, we destroy and uncreate it.
Right, wrong, good and bad, pot and pot, all nine shorts, boys and beyonds.
Yeah. Love that. Thank
Yeah.
you for bringing that up. That's really cool. And
Yeah,
so,
because
yeah, go ahead.
well, I was just gonna one more thing of it. It's like, it isn't that you control other people's choices, and I've been the source of ease around people that don't choose the ease that I'm inviting. So it does occur, but it does change something. It like makes more different choices available.
Yeah, makes different choices available.
Yeah.
And infinite choice, not limited choice.
Yeah.
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 So let's fast forward a little bit, because you're now in Panama, and so let me ask you a question. Do you speak Spanish?
Poquito.
You
I'm
speak a little
learning.
bit?
Yeah, I speak a little bit. So hablo español, pero no muy bien is what I've learned to say very well. I speak Spanish, but not very well. And
Right.
I'm learning. But so that was an interesting challenge, because when we were moving here, we both kind of had this fantasy that, oh, it's okay because there's lots of people in Panama that speak English. Not necessarily true. There's mostly people that speak Spanish and Panamanian Spanish, which is very different on the ear than like Mexican Spanish. And so, yeah, that was and not to mention the culture, which I really didn't, you just don't know what to expect when you move countries, right? Like, it's always so different.
So why did you move?
Well, again, I was looking at what our life will be like in 5 years. I'm pretty addicted to that question. But what catalyzed it was I got really present with our finances, and I'm making a lot of money now. I have the new problem of having money.
Yay!
Yeah. And so I was getting caught up on all things taxes and bookkeeping. And so I really started to educate myself on all of that. I really educated myself on the tax system in Canada. And then I was like, what's the tax system worldwide? And then I started really looking at, well, what else is possible? Because I'm getting into an income bracket now where I'm going to be at the highest level of taxation in Canada. And while I'm willing, do we have other choices? Like, I'm just curious. So just started poking around, and I found the nomadcapitalist.com, which is a great website just to get educated about that kind of stuff on. And then I was pretty settled that we were going to be in Canada because his daughter's there, and I had chosen him and I had chosen that. And so I was kind of, pretty sure that was going to be what we do. And but he had just taken Global Foundation. He had taken bars in Global Foundation. And so apparently that had shaken things up, because I came downstairs one day and I was talking to him about all this tax stuff, and we were getting caught up and asking just for his insight on something. And he sort of mused and he was like, well, what about Panama? And it took me a second, because I was like, but I thought we were here. I guess we don't have to be here. Like, things had opened up in his world in terms of his point of view about needing to stay in Canada. And so Panama wasn't like instantly angel singing light. I had to really go away and look at, okay, well, what would my life be like in 5 years if I choose that? And it was yes, but it was an interesting energy. It was definitely a yes. And I wouldn't say it was like I was super excited about it. I didn't know a whole lot about the country. Growing up as an American, Panama had sort of a negative reputation, but it was a yes. So we kind of started from there and went, okay, we both get yes, things will be greater in 5 years. What would it actually take to move there? And that's where it all began.
Is he from there? Is that your partner?
No, he's actually from Colombia.
Colombia,
And he's a Canadian citizen, so he's been in Canada for 12 years. So yeah, no, he's got a sister here.
Right, so it wasn't like home. Yeah, right.
No,
okay, there's something completely different.
close to home. Colombia is like right on the other side of the border, so
Yeah.
that was nice.
Yeah.
But yeah, no, not even home. Just a choice we could make.
Panama. So I just want to mention something here too, because you've mentioned this tool that you use a lot is, where will my life be in 5 years if I choose this? I just want to say, when you ask that question, it doesn't necessarily mean that Christel's going to be in Panama in 5 years' time and everything's going to be all rosy. It's the choice that you make, like at that moment. It's energetically, literally for that 10 seconds. Where is my life going to be in 5 years' time if I choose this? So then Christel moving to Panama might be that she stays there for 20 years. It could be that she stays there for 20 days or 20 weeks. But
not
that
relevant,
choice,
yeah.
and quite often when you make that choice from the tool that Christel mentioned before, Yes, No Universe, which is also one of my favorites. I think it's a great tool for control freaks.
Oh my God, I have to use it. Otherwise I think myself into oblivion.
Exactly. It's like, so you ask a question like yes, no, and you're like, get a yes. Okay, it's a yes. So then you choose that. Now you may be heading down this road, but as you choose this yes, it's like not cognitively, but there's a whole lot of possibilities that open themselves up. The universe goes, yay, we're playing, let's play, and opens up all these possibilities. So, she's in Panama and then something else might show up or something else might show up. It's like, I look at it as like this tree, and every choice you make is this trunk, and then all these branches, and then every leaf, is another possibility by this yes, no universe. And where will my life be in 5 years' time if I choose this? So it's a really amazing tool to play with and use to, as you say, navigate your life, but not from control, from choice.
Yes. And it's not even what will my life look like. It is literally what will it be like. And it's simply that this choice will expand things. And so I still have a new choice in every 10 seconds. So I make the choice. And it was interesting because we made the choice to move, and there was a crap ton of things to handle because of the international move. And so we were handling all those things, and it was getting really, 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 really intense. Like I had to go back and really look at it. I'm like, okay, because you could take the intensity of the actions that it takes to actualize some things as a sign that it's, oh, maybe I made the wrong choice. But I had to keep navigating our path with, okay, wait, what will our life be like in 5 years if we choose this? Yes or no? Yes. To not actually choose from the feelings of it all, because it was the uprooting of this kind of massive oak tree into overseas onto a ship, into a different country sort of energy. And so it wasn't comfortable, and it wasn't even necessarily all that fun. I had to find the fun in, I had just actually outfitted our entire house in Canada with I had made it mine. I bought all this furniture. We were it was beautiful. I loved it. And we were selling this brand new stuff for half price so that we didn't have to ship it. And I had to ask questions about that. I'm like, that's not my favorite choice, but what will my life be like in 5 years if I choose it? So there was a lot of having to navigate beyond the feelings of it into the awareness of it kind of constantly. So yeah, that's, I would say that's been a brunt of our relationship, is navigating beyond feelings into the awareness of, if I continue to choose this relationship, what will my life be like in 5 years? Because it's really been catalytic to be together. It's brought up a lot of our stuff that we were functioning from before to change. And so in and amongst all the sweetness that we do create and generate together, there's also been a lot of intense, intense stuff.
I love that. So, I mean, I know that we're, almost at the end of the podcast
Yeah.
here, and I love everything that you've been describing and the tools that you use, Christel, really is functioning from that place of relationships done different, and where will my life be in 5 years, 10 years, 2 years, etc. If I choose this. So, is there any other tools you want to just mention before we go about, I want to say, being the vulnerability that I know you're choosing in actualizing something that is totally different in the relationship you are choosing or not choosing, as the case may be?
Mm. I personally really always look at, I'm always looking at what is this choice, because relationship is it's so confronting. It's like it puts you right in the middle of like any and all of the great and good, bad, and ugly.
Yes.
I'm always looking at like, okay, if I choose this, what will it create? What do I want to be here? Like I can choose to be ugly and icy. I learned that. I can be loving. And I read about that in Salon de Femme with Gary. And sometimes what I want to choose to be requires a little more practice and a little more vulnerability with me, because it's not necessarily my most natural choice maybe in that moment.
Mm-hmm.
But it's like, what do I really want to be with this person? Because we always in every moment have the choice to destroy or create.
Yeah.
And relationship as it goes on is it's such a natural hotbed of innate destruction, sort of like. So that choice for the reality that I really want to be and choosing to be and learning myself to be, is you're perpetually invited to that. So maybe it's that question. It's like, what do I want to be here? Is it working for me to continue? Like if I'm on a reaction tear for some reason, is that working? Is that really what I want to create? And if it's not, what else can I choose? Like, what else is possible?
I love that. And you actually said two things there you said a lot of things, but what do I want to be here, but also what do I want to be with this person?
Mm-hmm.
And there's some really potent questions. And I do get also asking with yourself, but also definitely asking with another being, what do I want to be with this person, is, and we've mentioned it a few times, is a level of vulnerability that I see a lot of people are not willing to choose. They'd rather create that separation because my guess is they know it. But what if today was the day that you started breaking down those barriers and not trying to control everything, and actually asking, those two questions that Christel has mentioned. What do I want to be here? And that one's for you. And what do I want to be with this person? No matter who it is, if it's a lover or a friend or a colleague or whoever, it's like, what do I want to be with this person? Because to me, if you can be that for you, and with no expectations that anyone else is going to choose the same thing, but is that going to create a greater possibility for you and the planet by the choices that you choose?
Yeah.
Brilliant. So, Christel, I know that you're on the accessconsciousness.com website because you're an access consciousness facilitator.
Yes.
And where else can people find you?
You can find me at christeljoycrawford.com or businesswithchrystal.com, all over social media, Facebook, Instagram, YouTube. I have a really vibrant YouTube channel. If you guys need just a whole playlist of life-changing conversations, that's there. So yeah.
Awesome. And we'll have all of those in the show notes as well, so that you can find that with Christel. And actually, I've heard over the years, there's a lot of people, you have a lot of people who are incredibly grateful for you, Christel, and the videos that you have put out and how you've been in the world. So I'm going to use this moment to thank you on behalf of all of them, because it's in the most random of places. I'll get someone who goes, oh, I listen to your podcast all the time. Oh, and I also listen to Christel Crawford, it's like, it's really interesting. So obviously whatever you're doing and being out there is working, and thank you for being that in the world. Like,
thank you for being what you're being in the world. I'm so grateful. Yeah.
You're welcome. So thank you for being here today. Thank you for being on the podcast. And guys, if you like this, do the things, subscribe, follow, give us a review, etc. And please, it's like, check out accessconsciousness.com. There is we literally have thousands of facilitators and practitioners all around the world. So even in Panama. So if you're going to Panama, you can find Christel, for now, unless she's on the move again.
You never know.
You never know. You never know. That's the adventure of living, ladies and gentlemen. All right.
Yeah.
Anything else you want to say before we jump off?
No, thank you so much. And thank you guys so much for listening.
Thank you. Thank you for being here, and we will see you next time. Bye-bye.
Okay. Bye.
If you're enjoying this podcast and have a question or topic you'd like me to address, please leave a review wherever you are listening. The best way for me to know what it is you want to hear about is to send in your questions, and we actually read all the reviews that come in. So let us know which episodes you loved and what you want to hear about next, right there in the podcast reviews. And thank you. Truly, truly grateful.